it reminds me of a paragraph in Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence, where he talks about the intensity to a point where you get into a zone, the flow, that you're completely oblivious to anything that's going around you. And it might extend for a couple of seconds, it might extend for a couple of minutes, or sometimes even hours. And even hours. So how does one, and I'm going to move that to the education, how does one get into that flow, into that zone, without using, as you were sort of saying, the brain?
See, what we call as education is for different purposes, for different people. For example, in India, India is not one nation, there are many layers of India. So you cannot apply the same thing for all of them. So we have three systems right now going with the Isha educational programs. We have Isha Vidya, which is the rural education, where this is mainly from the age of 6, they're starting on computers, English language, because this is designed to get them out of a social and economic pit which they're trapped in. In the rural India, in the remote parts of India, there is no opportunity for them. Unless they learn English language and know some technology, they cannot get out of that situation. So that is made like that. We have another school called Isha Home School, which is run in a completely different atmosphere. This is for the more affluent. This is difficult to scale up. Here, for every child, or on an average, for every 4.5 children, there is one adult taking care of them. They live in a household of 20 with a very committed couple who will be like their house parent, and they takes care of them. Everything, education happens in the house except for sport, library and activity outside. Everything else happens within the home. They grow up in a very intense education mode. They're following some system in the country. They're right now following the Cambridge system of education so that they're internationally compliant. We have another school called Isha Samskriti, where if a child comes to the school, they have to come with a commitment of 12 years. Otherwise, we don't take them. Because here there is no academics. They learn only classical music, classical dance, yoga, Kalari Paitu, which is the mother of all martial arts, Sanskrit language and English language. You must see these children. They are intense, means super intense. Our effort is only to grow the human body and the brain to its fullest, without any intention, without ever asking what will you become later on. But their level of focus and commitment and the way they have evolved, these children, is a phenomena to watch.
So, I'm going to transition to my second dilemma. I'm going to be a little bit provocative here. The present education system that we have. And you just alluded to three, some of them have some similarities with what we have here. Now, the thing that the dilemma here is that this present education system, we talked about a lot of kids who are having anxiety, depression. Now, if we do a really good job of strengthening this education system, and we assume that SDG 4, which is one of the global goals on education, is that assumption is that this education system is the one that will deliver, we might end up in a catastrophic situation where we have 100% literacy, but with extremely high levels of depressed people running around the world. So my question is, do we do a fundamental change in the objective of education, rather than the traditional economic model that now drives, like what you have alluded during our discussions earlier on? Is it about building human capital, or is it about human flourishing for the individual, which I think the third stream of school that you had talked about alludes to? How do we tackle this?
See, with the kind of population pressures we have, doing an ideal form of schooling is utopian. It's not possible with the kind of population pressure we have. Millions and millions of children need to be educated. Doing an ideal system in countries like India will be out of question. We can only do this in small numbers. Scaling that up is not a possibility. First of all, if we have to change this, we have to change our economic module. what is significant in our life, this has to change, that's not going to change right away that's going to be too dreamy. See, when economics is the only value in a society, money is the only value, let me put it more bluntly. If you say, there is a big man in this city, it doesn't mean he has a big brain or a big heart. No, he just has a big pocket. That's what it means today in the world. So when money is the only value, competition is inevitable. Where there is competition of very intense kind, as the competition gets more and more aggressive, well, many will fall on the wayside, depressed, broken, in many damaged human beings we will create. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, that number is increasing to a point. See, in 2016, 18,600 children below 18 years of age committed suicide in India. Over 7,000 of them were below 15 years of age. 12, 13, 14-year-olds, if they have to take their own life, I think we're doing something fundamentally wrong in our societies. There's simply no question about it.
Well, if we talk about education at large, I think we're missing completely the point. I agree with you when you say that, well, if you ask a children, education is, and you let them fill in the rest, usually you say boring, which is not what you want for an educational system. Education should be about basically strengthening social-emotional learning, for once. Well, let's put it bluntly, where we know, even if we look at it from an economics point of view, right? Let's be taking the wrong side of the stick. Like, you know that 85% of the job now won't be there 30 years from now. If you continue to train the children the way we train them, you're gonna make them adapted to jobs that won't exist 30 years from now. So what you need to foster are abilities that are not fostered within the classroom. Being flexible, being attentive, being able to concentrate yourself, on your body. And I agree with you. I mean, it's of course problematic from a neuroscientific point of view because I talk about the brain, but the brain is within a body. We know that we have neurons within the gut, that the neurons within the gut, if you change, for instance, there's like data showing that if you change the neurons within the gut from someone who has a psychopathology, you take the gut of the neurons, the microbiota of the neurons from one people that has no psychopathology, you put it in the people who has psychopathology, the people who got the psychopathology goes better. So of course there is this direct relationship between the body and the brain. So I think this is what we need to foster within the educational system. Like, it should be fun, it should be, like, you need, like, basically the babies, they love to learn, and at some point they go in school and they don't like to learn, so we do the thing wrong. So we need to change basically the educational system. It should be fun for the children, because if you know that if it's fun, you learn more, basically. So I think, like, what we teach is not the thing we should be teaching. Well, let's put it bluntly too. I mean, knowledge, it's accessible everywhere. Get this like laptop or whatever connected on the internet will always have more knowledge than you have at every given time. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have knowledge, but that might not be the critical skills for the children 30 years from now. And we're always talking about what will be the word of our children, what will be the word we leave to our children. I think a good question will be also, what will be the children will leave for the word 30 years from now. And I think that changed the perspective and what we want to do in the schools. So I think that's the critical point, that if you want to change the things for the children.
See, as Gregoire as he said, this whole exercise of heaping yourself up with information will be meaningless, because a small gadget that you can carry in your pocket will say more things than your professors can speak ever. This happened to me when I was just 13 years of age, and I was largely allergic to school. So one day somebody showed me a flatbed calculator. For the first time I'm seeing a calculator, National Panasonic calculator. 100 rupees, very expensive those days. So, they showed me, tuk. It came out, what do you want? Any multiplication, division. Immediately I said, why the hell am I going to the math class? Because here it is, I can add, multiply, subtract, sin theta, cos theta, why the hell am I wasting my life sitting in the mathematics class? Here is everything. Well, at last that day is coming when children need not go to school. Schooling as we know it in the next 10 to 15 years' time could become absolutely meaningless because everything will be available knowledge-wise. The schools or the mystic traditions in India always focused on enhancing and enlarging human faculty rather than enhancing knowledge. That your ability to perceive has to be enhanced. Recently, because I've been running this Youth and Truth campaign, meeting all university students for the last 1 month, they've been asking me, Sadhguru, you're answering every question we ask, how is this? You have an answer for everything? I said, I don't have an answer for anything. I don't have an answer in my head for anything, but I just have clarity. I've worked for my clarity all my life to bring my faculties to that level of clarity that there is no mistake about what I see, that you see things just the way they are. I think this will be of immense value in future because information or gathering of information becomes meaningless. There was a time when large populations were… I've seen this in the villages of India, when most of the population do not know how to read, they're illiterate. One guy, some letter comes and he reads. You should see the wonder. Actually, he's looking at the paper and saying all these things. It's truly fantastic. People sit there open mouth, gaping at him, because just looking at a paper, he's saying all this. So that time is gone. Now a simple gadget will know more than the entire university knows. So this time has come, now is a fantastic time. This is the time for human beings to truly unravel and explore their consciousness because the burden of carrying information, assimilating it and expressing it in the world is gone. Some people are protesting, people are inviting me to these artificial intelligence conferences. I didn't understand why do they want me in artificial intelligence this thing, I'm not a technology person. I said, why are you guys inviting me? They said, Sadhguru, we don't know what to do, our jobs will be gone. I said, that means it's a holiday. Unless you know how to enjoy your vacation, you're going to be in big trouble. Unless you know how to be productive in a relaxed way, unless you know how to be productive in your vacation time, because your life will be a vacation. This is the same problem the workers' unions of this world had in early 20th century and mid-20th century. When mechanization came, when assembly lines came, everybody protested, our jobs are going to go. Now intellectuals are protesting, our jobs are going to go. They are going to go, there is no stopping. And isn't it great, you will not have a job to do and you can pursue your life. Instead of trying to make a living, you can make a life out of this. That's most wonderful time.
So on that philosophical note, and I was just going to say when you were
It's
saying…
very practical.
And practical. So we got a philosophical which is practical, which is always oxymoron, but here we have it. What I'm really… in a sense, when you said the Ishafa, the way that you mentioned one of the streams of education, but it was difficult to scale up. And in fact, you just provided a solution in a sense that AI would take away a lot of the mundane jobs that we're doing, that we can actually now concentrate on our children and provide the kind of nourishment that they will require as they grow up.
A human child is not like other creatures. When they're born, instinctively they know what to do, what not to do, and how to survive. Because all they have to learn in their life is how to procure food, how to reproduce, and how to gracefully die one day. That's all they need to learn, every other creature. And all this is instinctively built into them. The learning part of their life is very small. It's not that there's no learning, but the learning part is actually very small, and even that, without anybody's guidance, they're capable of learning that. But a human child is not made like that, simply because the range of development that happens in a human being is so vast and it can be much bigger than what it is right now if only these concerns of survival are taken away from the human being. How to earn my living? Where to get my food? If this concern is taken away, believe me, human genius will unfold in a way that you have not imagined possible. So, as you said, definitely all these people who lose their jobs, they can focus on the children and above all, see, you don't have to know physics to be a physics teacher. It is on a platform where everything, the best physics teacher is teaching physics. All you need is a loving human being who is inspiring for the children to be with. This is something I've always noticed. If you ask children why they took to a certain subject, most of them will say, because I liked the teacher in my third standard who taught me math, that's why I took to math. Somebody says in fifth standard, I liked my English teacher, that's why. The teacher that they loved, naturally the subject also they loved. This is how a child is made. This is the nature of a human being because unfortunately we have relegated emotion to a second place, but largely human beings are far more emotional than they're intellectual. Because we thought intellect is sense, emotion is senselessness, somebody interpreted it like this, we've lost it. But I'm asking you, the deepest and the most profound form of education, emotion that a human being can have is devotion. Tell me, people think devotion means it's about God, going to temple or somewhere. No. Tell me, has any individual reached a state of excellence in anything they're doing, whether it's music or art or politics or business or sport or even spirituality, without being devoted to what they're doing? Without being absolutely devoted to what you're doing, right now, you never get to any big place, you do mediocre things. So, devotion or emotion has always been the forefront of human life, but unfortunately we've relegated that to a second place, thinking logical data process is more important. This is all we're doing with our intellect. And that will become meaningless. And I'm just looking forward, I hope it doesn't take too much time, when I'm still around it happens.
Gregoire, some
Yeah,
last…
I generally agree. Like, it's important also to understand that there is no real dissociation between reasoning and emotion. Actually, the two are very, very strongly connected. So your brain works basically by the way you make ears. Ears, like, unfold in making emotion in our body, in our brain, and this recalling of the emotion that you basically made during like previous time helps you to correct your ears, whatever they are, in whatever subject. So basically, interestingly, we are emotional being. We drive, the learning is driven actually by emotion, by simple emotion, by also very complex emotion, such as regret, relief. Those are actually very strong emotion to basically learn. And so there is no opposition basically between the two. I also agree that basically the classroom in the 21st century will not about like providing the knowledge, but will be probably to tailor the knowledge or tailor the abilities of each child depending on his learning curve. And that's what we need to achieve. We won't be able to achieve it with like classes with 35 children. So maybe technology is a good way to help us like on this path to make the education a little more tailored to each and every individual, because we know that the more closely you're following the learning curve of the children, the better they develop. That's what works best, basically. And it works best if you have a social environment, as you said, like fostering a very strong socio-emotional environment around the children, not only at school, but also in the society, is a very, very strong leverage for their learning, whatever the learning. Even like the knowledge learning is improved by the social-emotional environment in which the children will develop. So I think that's critical. We know it has an effect on the neuroplastic processes. So the higher the social-emotional environment, the better it is, the higher the neuroplasticity, so the higher the possibility of learning. So I think let's not think necessarily that it's dissociated. One will help the other. So if we like put the emotion at the center, we will help everything, basically.
Today is Mahatma Gandhi's anniversary. So Mahatma insisted the means or how you do something is as important as the goal or what you're trying to achieve. This is why this whole non-violent way of doing things. So how people become peaceful, how people become joyful, it's a big question mark. With a drink or a drug, a whole lot of people are peaceful or joyful. Is that the way to take the world? Or it happened like this. There was a young woman who was married and the husband is abusive. Verbally abusive, sometimes get physically abusive, sometimes get sexually abusive. But she was very peaceful. One day the husband looked at her after a burst of abuse. He said, "How do you do this? I abuse you in so many ways, but you're always peaceful." She said, "I clean the toilet." He said, "What? Even when I beat you, you're peaceful. What do you do?" She said, "I clean the toilet." "How does cleaning the toilet help you to be peaceful?" She said, "I use your toothbrush." Well, there are different ways, but doing it the right way is very important.